Hi everyone, and welcome to Expressions and Equations Lesson C, Topic 1, Solving One-Step Equations. In this video, we are going to talk about learning goals 6 and 7. We will only talk about one-step equations of learning goal 6. However, we are still going to learn to apply inverse operations to isolate the variable and solve one-step linear equations involving integers and fractions. We will also learn to evaluate the equation by substituting the value of the variable to check if the solution is correct. Let's get started. So, what are inverse operations? Inverse operations are opposites that undo each other in math. They help us isolate the variable when solving equations. The inverse of addition is subtraction, and the inverse of subtraction is addition. The inverse of division is multiplication, and the inverse of multiplication is division. How do inverses help us solve equations? Well, when solving an equation, the main goal is to isolate the variable or to get it alone on one side of the equal sign. To do this, we use inverse operations, aka math operations that undo each other. So, addition and subtraction are inverses, and multiplication and division are inverses. It's also important to remember that an equation needs to remain balanced. So when using inverse operations, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Let's look at some examples. Let's look at the inverse of addition and what that would look like. X plus 7 equals 13. We have x, a positive 7, and that's equal to 13. We want to get the x by itself, so we've got to get rid of this negative or positive 7 and move it over here. So the only way to do that is to minus 7 from both sides. When we minus 7 from both sides, we end up with x plus 0 equals 6, or x equals 6. Let's look at the inverse of subtraction. X minus 4 equals 13. So we have the variable and then minus 4. So because we see this minus 4, when minusing a constant, this term, we need to use the inverse of that subtraction, which is addition, and we are going to add 4 to both sides. When we add 4 to both sides, we get x minus 0 equals 17, or x is equal to 17. Let's look at the inverse of multiplication. What would that look like? 7x equals 14. So we have a coefficient, and remember, coefficients mean to multiply the variable. So that's safe to say that anytime we see a coefficient, we're going to need to use the inverse of multiplication to solve the problem. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So that means we need to divide both sides by that coefficient to get the variable by itself. So 7x divided by 7 and 14 divided by 7. When we divide 7x divided by 7, that just gives us 1x. And then 14 divided by 7 is 2. Let's look at the inverse of the inverse of division. Most of the time, especially with one-step equations, if you are going to use the inverse of division, it's going to be in fractional format. So if you look, we have x divided by 5 equals 4. So don't get tripped up because you see a fraction. Fractions are really not as scary as they seem. All we want to do is to get this x alone, and the way to do that is to use the inverse of division. And in this case, or in all cases, the inverse of division is multiplication. But in this case, we need to multiply both sides by 5. When we multiply x over 5 by 5, it's going to cancel out that denominator, really turning it into a 1x. And then 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So we end up with x is equal to 20. There is one more example I want to give so you understand what to do if you're ever in this situation. Negative x minus 10. You can totally look at this as the opposite of x. Did I just say minus 10? I meant to say negative x equals 10. I'm sorry, I need to slow down. Negative x equals 10. If you're ever in this situation, you can totally look at it as the opposite of x equals 10. But I do want you to remember that if you do not see a coefficient in front of the variable, that means that there is an invisible 1. And in this case, since there's a negative, it's going to be a negative 1. So the coefficient is really negative 1. And so in order to solve this problem, we have to divide both sides by negative 1. And when we divide both sides by negative 1, we will get x is equal to negative 10. So the next few slides after these practice tips are practice problems that I encourage you to do with me. So a one-step equation only has one operation being done to the variable. Your goal is to undo that operation using its inverse and to get the variable by itself. So first, whenever you look at an equation, identify what's happening to the variable. Ask yourself, is something being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided? Then you'll use that inverse operation to undo it. And don't forget, addition and subtraction are inverses, and multiplication and division are inverses. It's also important to remember to keep it balanced. So do the same thing to both sides. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So let's look at the first example. Like I said, feel free to pause the video, do the equation, and then check your answer to see if you did it correctly. 5x equals 20. Ooh, we have over here, what's going on? We have a coefficient. What do we know about coefficients? Oh, we know that they multiply the variable. So because that's an indication of multiplying, we need to use the inverse of multiplication to solve this problem. The inverse of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by the coefficient of 5. When we divide 5x by 5, that's going to give us a 1x. And then 20 by 5, we will get 4. So our answer will be x is equal to 4. But we must remember to always check your work by plugging in the solution. If the equation is true, you know your answer is correct. If the equation is false, you know your answer is wrong. So let's check it. We had 5x equals 20, and we ended up with x is equal to 4. So we're going to substitute that 4 into the equation for x, and we will have 5 times 4 is equal to 20. Well, 5 times 4 is actually 20, and that is equal to 20. So we've got this equation correct. Let's look at the next one. We have x minus 5 equals negative 12. So it looks like we have the variable and then a negative constant or a minus 5. So we are going to need to use the inverse of subtraction to solve this problem. The inverse of subtraction is addition, and so we will solve this problem by adding 5 to both sides. When we add 5 to x minus 5, that's going to zero the 5's out. And then negative 12 plus 5 is going to give us negative 7. So we will end up with x is equal to negative 7. But we need to remember to check our answer. So originally we had x minus 5 equals negative 12. And our answer or our solution was negative 7. So we're going to plug that negative 7 or substitute that negative 7 in for the negative 5. So for the x. So negative 7 minus 5 is equal to negative 12. Well, negative 7 minus 5 is actually equal to negative 12, and negative 12 is equal to negative 12, so we know we're correct. But what would happen if maybe you accidentally neglected to see that negative sign and you said 12 plus 5? Let's look at, and we would have got 17. Let's look at what would have happened if we would have gotten 17. So if we had x minus 5 equals negative 12, and remember, we are pretending we forgot to or neglected to see the negative sign and got 17. So 17 minus 5 is equal to negative 12. Well, 17 minus 5 is actually positive 12, and that is not equal to negative 12. So if we ended up with something like this, we would actually need to go back and rework the problem to see if we could get the correct answer. This is a sure method to make sure your answer is correct. Next, we have x plus 12 equals negative 15. So what's going on the side with the variable? Ooh, a plus 12. So we need to get rid of that by using the inverse of addition, which is subtraction. So we need to subtract 12 from both sides. When we subtract the 12 from the side with the variable, we get x plus 0. Then we need to subtract 12 from the other side. Negative 15 minus 12 gives you negative 27. Remember to pay attention to those signs. Negative plus a negative. That's like you borrowed $15 and you borrowed another $12 and you owe them a total of $27, right? So make sure we check our answer. Our original equation was x plus 12 equals negative 15. So plugging or substituting our solution of negative 27 in for the x plus the 12 equals negative 15. Well, negative 27 plus 12 actually is negative 15, and that's equal to negative 15, so we are correct. X divided by 6 equals 18. Ooh, fraction. So because we see a fraction, we know, okay, that's division. And I need to isolate this variable by using the inverse of division, which is multiplying. So we need to multiply both sides by that denominator of 6. And I did the 6 over 1 so you could easily see how this actually does turn into a 1x. But they will cross out to get 1x, and then 18 times 6 is 108. So x is equal to 108. Don't forget to check your answer. So x over 6 was equal to 18. That was our original equation. We're going to substitute our 108 in for the x and get 108 divided by 6. Does 108 divided by 6 equal 18? Well, it actually does. 18 equals 18, so we are correct. Thank you guys for watching the video, and I hope you understand one-step equations.